Hey there YouTube, this is the Phantom Outlaw coming to you again with another review. Today we're going to talk about the Smith & Wesson M&P 9 full size. So that's what we're looking at right here. Alright, so let's talk a little bit real quickly about the different options in the M&P line. As I stated, this is the full size. They've also got a compact, which is a slightly smaller version of this one. They've got the Shield, which is the smallest version. So you've got a full size, a compact, and then a subcompact. The Shield, we've already seen that review done. Great little single stack concealable gun. The compact is right in between these two, and I've had my hands on some, but I have not owned one. So at this point there won't be a review coming on that, but I am very much in favor of the full size. This M&P 9mm is my go-to full size right now. I use it in my IDPA matches. It's just a great gun to shoot. So before we get too much further along, first thing we want to do, make sure we are going to safety check it. We've got an empty magazine, empty chamber, so we do have a safe gun. Alright, so as we're looking at the M&P here, the first thing I want to start off with, as always, is let's talk a little bit about some stats and some numbers. And so we can get everybody up to speed on that. Again, most of this information that we're going to talk about right here, you can find very easily with just a few clicks on the internet. So we are dealing with the Smith & Wesson M&P 9mm full size. Obviously the caliber is 9mm. The overall length is 7.63 inches. The height is 5.5 inches. The width 1.2 inches. The sight radius is 6.4 inches. The barrel length is 4.25 inches. The weight empty is 24 ounces. The weight loaded is 31 ounces. The trigger pull from the factory is 6.5 pounds. I've tweaked mine just a little bit. I have the Apex Decac trigger system in here, and mine's a little bit closer to 5.5 pounds right now. And the capacity on this is 17 plus 1 if you live in one of the free states. So that's the basic stats on that. There's a few other things which we will go over here in just a moment, but I wanted to make sure that we were able to compare that to, I guess the Glock 17 and the XD are the two most commonly compared firearms, and the stats are very, very similar to those. So let's make sure we're all on the same page as far as that goes. Alright, so let's go over a couple other things here. When we're talking about the M&P, one of the first things that comes to mind for almost anybody who picks up this gun is the ergonomics. When you're holding this in your hand, the way that it feels with this built-in, the beaver strap on this is already built in. It's not a back strap you have to add to it. You can get your hand really high up into it. Just the way the grip feels with the adjustable back straps. You've got 3 different sizes. You can make it thicker this way as well as thicker this way. So you've got a couple different options based on your hand size and what your preference is. So the way this feels in your hand, the way that you aim and shoot and point with this is just fantastic. For those of you that have ever compared this to, say, the Glock, which is probably one of the most common comparisons out there, there are many similarities and there are differences. To me, the biggest difference is the ergonomics and the feel. This is just a great feeling gun in your hand. I have a review out there already. I have this same gun in the 40. I did a review on that several months ago, and I really don't know why I forgot to. I guess I just forgot to do one on the 9. I meant to do both of them at the same time, and I got interrupted that day, and apparently I just never got back around to it. So this review is probably about 4 months past due. But the point is that the M&P line is just an absolutely fantastic line. The 40 and the 9mm, all the dimensions are identical. The way the gun feels in your hand, the way it grips, the point of aim, everything is identical on these. So there's really nothing bad I have to say about that. And I'll get to some pros and cons here shortly. And definitely among the pros has to be the ergonomics, the way the gun feels in your hand, the way when you pick it up and you grip it, the way it just feels like it's an extension of your own hand. So that's a big thing we want to talk about there. When we look at the sights on this, one of the things you're going to notice pretty quickly is they are not your typical sights. These are the Trijicon HD night sights, and as you can see on mine, I'm not sure how easily you can see that, it's got the yellow front sight oversized dot. This also is available in the orange dot. I personally prefer the yellow, and the center of that dot is Trijicon, so it does glow in the dark. And when you see those at night, it looks just like any other Trijicon sight. You don't see the large yellow dot. Not that that would be a problem, but it's not some great big beacon flashing in front of you. But to me, it really helps with sighting, picking up the front sight as you're moving around trying to acquire targets. Again, I use this in my IDPA shooting, and there are some that will tell you the big dots or the oversized dots makes it's harder to shoot accurately with that as far as like more like bullseye shooting. Well, that may be true, but as far as just trying to hit your target, to me, especially for someone's eyes who are pushing 50 here, you know, it's easier for the eyes to pick up that big yellow dot than some little white sliver. So that's one upgrade that I made to this gun. That's not a factory option. They do have night sight factory options. There's 2 or 3 different options. You can check the Smith & Wesson website to see those, but this is one that I added on myself specifically for this. It's the same sights I had on the 40 as well as the ones I've put on the shield, on my shield carry. So for me, that's the personal choice. And then the 2-dot rear sight here is also obviously Trijicon. All right, so a couple other quick options we're going to talk about. We've got the takedown lever here. It's pretty standard. The slide release is ambidextrous, so we've got it on both sides. The magazine release can also be switched over. Right now I'm right-handed, so it's set up to be on the left side of the gun, but the magazine release is full ambi. It's a teardrop shape, a little bit different. Maybe if you're a big Glock enthusiast, this will be a slightly different shape for you. But as you can see, it does protrude pretty far out from the frame, so it's something that's easy to pick up. I will tell you this, in all of my competition shooting, I've never fumbled around for the magazine release. It's always been right there, right where you expect it to be. I've never had a problem. The magazines drop free without any issue. So there's no problem with that as far as that goes. Some other things we want to talk about. We already talked about the 3 different sizes for the palm swell adjustable back strap. Again, it'll adjust sizes in 2 different dimensions. The texture on these palm swells, as well as the front strap here, the back strap and the front strap, it's not real aggressive. It's smooth, but there's definitely texture there. There's a slight little bit of texture right in here, but it's smooth across here where your finger or your thumb will go. It's very smooth. I think I may have mentioned this on my review of the shield. I did add the rubberized Talon grips on my shield because there was too much area that had no texture, and because it was a smaller gun and the fact that it's an EDC gun, I wanted to make sure that there was a better purchase on the gun. I don't feel the need at all on the full size. There's enough texturing on here that I've always been very comfortable. I've never had any issues in any of the competitions. I've never had any issues not having a good purchase on the gun, not feeling comfortable shooting it. That's never been a problem. And although the grips are almost identical on the shield, they're smaller and just a slight bit different, that there was not a need, but probably more just a little bit of a desire on that. So as far as the grip textures go, but it's a very nice, comfortable grip texture. I think you've heard me mention a few times on some of the other reviews that my wife is kind of finicky about grip texture. She doesn't like real aggressive. She likes more passive. She really likes the grip on her shield, which is the standard one. I did not add anything to hers. She also enjoys shooting these as well. She's ironically, she really likes shooting my Glock 17, but she does not like the texture on that. It's a Gen 4, and she feels that it's just too aggressive. She does enjoy the grip on the M&Ps, but you know, and actually she really likes shooting this too, but because it's the gun I shoot in competition, that's not an option. So she's very happy shooting the 17. Now there is also an available external safety you can get on the M&P line. I do not care for that, so I did not get that. But that is an option on the full size. That is, it comes standard on the shield. That is not an option to get without. But the full size and the compact, you have the option of the external safety or no external safety. You do see also the trigger guard is a little bit oversized. If you have a gloved finger, it's easy to get your finger in there. If you're not trying to cram a big old glove in there. Now, if you have a real heavy duty glove on, you're going to be in trouble no matter what trigger or what gun you go with. But as far as a standard thin glove, there's plenty of room in here to get around with that. The serrations, you've probably noticed on these serrations here, or scalloping, depending what term you want to use, fish scales. I've heard all kinds of different ones. I really like these. It makes it a very simple process to rack the slide on this. It's real easy to grab a hold of. Very, very comfortable. That doesn't mean that other ones are not comfortable. I think if somebody says that, oh, they got the M&P because of the slide serrations, well, more power to them, but they notice something that most don't. There is a loaded chamber indicator. That little hole right there, if there's brass in there and you look in there, you can see it. Now, one downside to that, as many people will probably point out, it's not tactile. You can't feel that. So if you're in the dark and you're trying to determine if the gun's loaded, there's no real way for you to tell. Some guns have a little reset that'll pop up, or maybe out to the side if there's a loaded chamber. If that's what you're looking for, then the M&P does not offer that. Obviously, one downside to those, while you can feel it and see it, that's another working mechanism that could get gunked up and stuck. So it may give you a false indication. I'm not saying you shouldn't have it, just something to think about. Again, this is the 9mm, so the top of the barrel is marked 9mm right here. If you have the 40 or the 357 SIG or the 45, it would be so indicated on there. This does have, obviously, the Smith & Wesson markings on the barrel. We've got the M&P logo as well. It shows the 9 for the caliber. The Smith & Wesson logo. Pretty basic stuff as far as that goes. The sights, again, these are not stock sights. I switched these, so I really can't give you that example anymore. But I chose these. The original factory sights weren't bad. They just weren't night sights. It's an option that I chose to make. All right, so we've talked about the different features. I've shown you some of them. Let's talk about some pros and cons now. I've got my list here. We want to go over a couple of the different things. Now, when I compare some of this, some of the comparisons I'm using here and some of the references will be directly comparing it to the Glock, which is the one I'm most familiar with. But overall, some pros, some really popular stuff here. It does have a stainless steel barrel and slide. It is available in the blue version or the flat dark earth. There is also a VTAC version, a Vikings tactical version, that is available out there now. With some other different upgrades if you're looking for that. All right, now, regular pros. The grip angle. We've already talked about the grip angle is a great selling point, very much a pro as far as the M&P line. It's almost identical, if not identical, to your standard 1911 grip angle. For those of you that have shot a 1911, you know that's just a great, very comfortable grip angle. So that's definitely a big plus. As I said, overall, that adds into the ergonomics. That gun feels like it's part of your hand. The point of aim is just very natural. You pick it up and point it. You don't have to adjust it. If you shoot multiple handguns, including a Glock in that, you will notice when you pick up a Glock and your point of aim, unless it's the only gun you shoot, there's a and maybe you don't even think about it. Maybe it's totally subconscious. But because I'm aware of this, I pay attention to it. And I've challenged my wife and some friends as well to do the same thing, and it's something we all do. With the Glock, there's the half second or quarter second where when you pick it up for point of aim, you have to real quickly and slightly adjust your wrist. Not a big deal, but it's a plus for the M&P line. So the grip angle and the ergos kind of go hand in hand there, and it's a great plus. Price, these are slightly cheaper than the Glocks, not tremendously. You're probably looking at $30 to $50 cheaper. Depending on which version you go with. Now, on that same note, the Glock, especially the Gen 4s, will come with 3 magazines. The M&P line, the base model, will come with 2 magazines. There is a range kit, which I'll cover here in a moment. So if you want to throw the third magazine into it, you're getting real close as far as price comparison goes. Reliability. Smith & Wesson is a big name in the firearm industry. They're not new. They've been around forever. The M&P's been out since 05, 06, so it's been coming up on 9 years, I guess, now. And there have been a few tweaks and upgrades and modifications. This one here was made early 2013 or late 2012. It does have all the upgrades up to that point, so I've had no troubles whatsoever with this. So reliability-wise, fantastic. I've had absolutely no issues whatsoever, period, with the 9. If you look at my 40 review, I think I mentioned in there that I did have some issues there. With the 40, I sent it back to Smith. They replaced the extractor, and since then, flawless, no problems whatsoever. But as far as the 9 goes, perfect, no issues. Some more pros. Aftermarket parts, maybe not as plentiful as with the Glock, but there still are a bunch out there. So depending on what you want to look into, I've already mentioned on this one that I do have the Apex DCAC trigger system in here. That's one upgrade. There's other ones you can get as well. But aftermarket parts are plentiful. It does have the rail, the Picatinny rail on there, so you can add on your lights or your lasers or whatever combination you want to go with there. The range kit option, which I briefly mentioned a moment ago, I did get that for my M&P 40. Could not find it when I got the 9. They just weren't available. They were sold out pretty much everywhere. But the range kit, what you get with the range kit is you get a third magazine, you get a holster, you get a dual magazine holster, and you get the Plua magazine speed loader, as well as some cheap earplugs. But so it's $120 or so upgrade, and you get it for about $70 or something like that. I forget exactly now. So if you can find the range kit, it's definitely worthwhile. If for nothing else, it seems like the magazine, although I will say this, when I first started shopping for the magazines for this one, which was a little over a year ago, you couldn't find them anywhere. Every place I went, they all said they get shipments in 2 or 3 times a week, and they don't know what's coming in. The next one they've ordered and they just haven't come in. It took forever to find magazines. I've got 7 or 8 now, I think. And I was picking them up one at a time whenever I'd get lucky. And I think all of them were found online except for one. Online retailers. But now everywhere you look, you can find them. I was at a Academy Sports here in the Atlanta area not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, and they had about 10 or 12 of them in that store alone. The 17 round magazine. So they're back. They're a little bit more expensive than the Glocks. These are selling for right around the $38 to $42 mark, depending where you find them. The Glock magazines are around $28 or so. So you're talking, $8, $10, $12 more, depending where you want to get them from. And personally, I think the Glock magazines are probably a little bit better than these. So you have to make a decision on that. And I already mentioned that the slide stop release is ambidextrous. So those are the pros. A couple of the cons. The breakdown of this gun, the field stripping, is almost identical to, well, not identical. It's as simple as the Glock. Slightly different process, but it's very, very simple. However, to take it down any further, it's more complicated, much more complicated than the Glock is. So that's a little bit of a con if you're used to the Glock. The simplicity of the Glock does not translate identically over to the M&P line. But as far as field stripping, it's very, very straightforward. I can show you that here in just a second. A couple other cons. As I've already mentioned, the magazine availability and pricing. They are available almost everywhere now. And if they're not available when you go back a week or so later, and you may be able to find them. So it's a whole different situation than it was a year ago or 6 months ago or 4 months ago, whatever you were looking. So that was a con. It's a little bit less so right now. And the factory trigger. Now, they've made some upgrades, and this one came out right about the time that the upgrades came out. So I had shot some of these previously that had been made before the upgraded triggers came out. So I knew that I don't want to say downfall. The original trigger system, the reset wasn't nearly as crisp or clean. It was just a different trigger. So when I got this one, I put maybe 100 rounds to it, and in my mind, it had a bad trigger. Not a bad trigger. It didn't have a perfect trigger. Whether or not it had the upgrade yet or not, I don't know. I should have been more patient and researched it, but I didn't. But I upgraded to the Apex DCAC trigger system, and I have been very, very happy since then. Now, part of that might be between my ears. It may be the same trigger system, basically the same trigger system that came with it, because I know that Smith & Wesson did upgrade their trigger systems about a year and a half, or between a year and a half ago, depending when your gun was made. But I'm very happy with this one now. I think I mentioned also in the Shield review that the Shield, especially the newer Shields made within the last 6 months or so, all have the newer trigger system in those as well. So there's a definite difference, but the original trigger factory triggers and the M&Ps would definitely be a con. There's a lot of people, I don't think you're going to find too many people out there that'll say that those old triggers are great. I have seen some reviews where people said that despite the bad publicity, they didn't see any problems with them, and that may be. Either those people have a little bit higher forgiveness than others, or maybe they actually did get a really good trigger system in theirs. But overall, they had a bad rep for this originally, and if you get one that's been made within the last year or moving forward, you should get a much more solid trigger. So really not a big deal as far as that goes. We've already talked about all the other things that I really like about this one, that I like about the comparison as far as the M&P versus the Glock. And again, I'm not saying that Glocks are bad. I've got them. I own several Glocks. For me, shooting-wise, picking this one up, as far as point of aim, the natural feel for it, it's just a very smooth and comfortable ergonomics. Love that. So that's my big selling point on this one. I'm comfortable shooting it. I shoot it very accurately. Comparison, I'm not a very accurate shooter compared to some out there, but my results with the M&P are the same as my results with the Glocks. the fact that this one feels much more comfortable is why I choose to shoot this one in competitions. All right, enough said about that. To go a little bit over the breakdown on this, as I mentioned, we're going to take the magazine out, verify again that it is empty. Okay, now what we're going to do, we're going to rack the slide back. This is tough for me to do backwards. And go ahead and lock it up. This is the takedown lever. So what we're going to do from here, we're just going to slide this down. Okay, now we're going to and then slide back and release and pull the trigger, and the slide comes straight off. That's all there is to it. Then from here, you just take out the spring, the guide rod, and the barrel. It's now field stripped. Nothing to that. In that regard, it's very much the same as any other one that's out there. It is a captured guide rod and spring. And reassembly, same thing. Put the barrel, spring, guide rod back in, line up these rails in the frame, slide it straight back. Make sure that this takedown lever does stay down. Slide it back, slide that up, you're back in business. So that's really all there is to it as far as breaking it down. Now, one of the things I did in there is you heard me talk about pulling the trigger. You don't have to pull the trigger. There is a sear deactivation lever, which you're never going to be able to see in here. You can take out, see this, I don't know if you can see this on the plug here of the handle. This little thing, if you rotate that handle 90 degrees and then pull it out, and it's stubborn to come out sometimes, you get a tool. Now this tool does two things. One, it holds in, if you're looking to change your back straps, that's what holds the back straps in, but it also gives you a tool. You can use this as a punch. You can also use it, and you're never going to see this, but there is a little yellow sear deactivation lever in here, which, there we go. Now, I don't know if you can see it now, but there's that little yellow lever in there, and that with this tool you can flip that down, so when you're breaking it down, you just slide the lever, release it, and it comes off. You don't have to pull the trigger. So if you're one of those people that is nervous or don't want to have to pull your trigger for breaking it down, you can do it that way. Although Smith & Wesson will tell you in their manuals and anywhere else you want to look it up that pulling the trigger to deactivate it does no harm to the firearm. So you have those two options. Last thing I want to talk about is the trigger. And you can see on this trigger, or maybe you can't, I'm not sure if you can, there's a safety built in here, and that little point right there of the trigger has the hinge. And you can see as you pull the trigger, that's where it hinges. And that if you pull the trigger above that, it stops. It can't go any further than right there. But that little lever up there, when you pull the trigger back, releases that safety, and it allows you to pull the trigger. So that's a little bit different than the Glock. The Glock has, it's the same, it works basically the same way as the Glock. The Glock has it built into the center of the trigger. With the M&P, it's a hinged bottom of the trigger. All right, so that's all the kind of stuff that I wanted to go over with the M&P. I don't want to bore you with a whole bunch of minutiae of detail here, but for me personally, the M&P line is a very comfortable gun to hold, very comfortable gun to handle, to aim, to shoot. It's accurate, it's reliable, it's a lot of fun. I get asked this question pretty frequently because people know that I have the M&Ps as well as Glocks. And they ask me flat out, which one do I prefer? And the obvious answer is both. I like both. But as far as competition shooting, I've chosen the M&P because of the comfort. The reliability is the same as the Glock. They're both very good. The accuracy is about the same. But the comfort of it for me, this really wins over. So that's the M&P 9mm full size. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask me on the channel here. And I will get back to you as quickly as possible. Hope you're all doing well. Take care.